You're listening to Hockey Talk on the Rock
All right, stop!
with Laura and Keith.
It's interesting.
So let's back up a second.
He played absolutely out of his mind.
It made no sense to me.
And now, here are your hosts.
Alrighty, well, we are back for Hockey Talk on the Rock, episode number 31. It is, what day is it? It is Monday, May 10th, all day long here on Salt Spring Island. That's Laura over there. I'm Keith, and we're going to talk about a lot of hockey things because it's been a week, that's for sure. I think we talked last week about how we're maybe going to compare our predictions for the standings. I think we're going to postpone any of that because there's just too much to get through, and the standings could still change a little bit maybe. I think tonight might have finalized things, but anyways, before I throw it to you for the opening intro Canucks rant as per our usual, I did want to quickly throw a hot take to you off the top, right, to throw you off a little bit.
Yeah, let's do it.
From the usual. So I'm going to quickly say my hot take for the episode is after the season, the Canucks will actually clean house in the upper management of the organization and hire a new team, and that new team will extend Travis Green for 2 years, but give him a year to see if they want to keep going or not.
Yeah.
And the reason I chose this as my hot take off the top is based on news we're going to talk later about New York and what they did. And I feel like based on what they did, and we'll talk about it more, the Canucks will face more pressure to make this move.
Yeah, I'll agree with you on half of it, and maybe this is wishful thinking on my part. I think the Canucks will clear house in the upper management, or at least get rid of Benning. And the reason why I think that is going to happen is actually to do with the COVID situation. I know when it happened, or when it first was reported on, there was a lot of talk on Sportsnet about how players weren't happy. They weren't happy with how they were dealt with specifically by management. And they kind of thought that was the tipping point, or like the end, the final straw for that team. I'm sorry, I'll turn that off. So I wouldn't be surprised if they do. I'm a bit of a pessimist about Travis Green. And again, I think maybe this is me just being negative, but I just have this feeling that he's ending up in Seattle like 100%, and that it's going to come back to bite the Canucks like next year. Either they'll have a better team than Vancouver, or they'll like cause Vancouver to be eliminated from the playoff race or something, right? Like, I just feel that, but that could be just me just being negative. So I'll say I agree with you 50%.
And we'll touch on that a bit more too, because at the end, depending on our time, I might throw at you a quick little game of predict where the coaches land kind of thing.
Okay.
Depending on the time, because we've got a lot to go through. So
Sounds good. Yeah, I'll be pretty quick with the Canucks rant today, because I honestly don't feel like there's that much to add. Like, they were officially eliminated tonight from the playoff race, but we all knew for a while now they weren't making the playoffs. They had that little burst when they came back from COVID, and then they just absolutely hit a wall. But the reason why they're not making the playoffs is not because of this schedule and all the awful stuff they had to go through post-COVID. It's because they had an absolutely awful start to the season. They really only had one decent month, which was in March, I believe, right? And this February was the really bad one, and I think March was good. But it's too bad. It was a letdown, but I don't think it was that big of a letdown, especially with Pettersson missing like the majority of the year. But I think the building blocks for this team are still in place. Demko looks like he's a solid number one goalie. I think I said this last week. I think Quinn Hughes bounces back. Rathbone looks like a legit NHL player. That's a positive. Hoglander looks great. Besser, Horvat, PD. They all look really good. They have pieces. They're going to get a high draft pick. Let's hope they hit on it. Not only are they getting a high draft pick, but they have all their picks this year. So again, this is probably the year we're having the most amount of picks. It's best for you. And so hopefully they hit another one out of the park, and we'll see how it goes with that. But that's basically all I have. I did want to really quickly touch on Jake Virtanen because I know we didn't talk about it yet, and I don't really want to talk about it that much to be perfectly honest, but I just think that, and I think it's the obvious thing, right? Like he's not coming back. This is the end for him. It's kind of like the Tony DeAngelo situation in New York, where he was given like one more chance to not be a problem, and then he blew it. And I completely expect the Canucks to terminate that contract in the summer, which honestly probably ends up in the best interest for the Canucks. So that's it. But
That's interesting. I hadn't really thought about that, but I'd agree with you on that. And yeah, I only put down a couple notes because I mean there was not much to talk about other than the Canucks losing, and so I just thought I'd point out that I do like how all the injuries have amounted to this strange opportunity for the Canucks to get a good look at a lot of these bottom six guys and young guys. It's kind
yeah,
of it's worked out for them. And I liked, Rathbone specifically, and I'm excited. I think they're saying that they're going to play Gadjevich tomorrow in Winnipeg, and I'd be excited to see how he's come along because I know he struggled
yeah,
from development a little bit, but then or this year he's already got 15 goals in 19 games in the AHL. So looking forward to seeing him if he does get a shot. And then yeah, my final note was just about like how I hope they give the unsung hero of the award of the year or whatever to Hoagie because he's the man, and he's starting to hit the net a bit more. He got a couple goals tonight. He moved into sole possession of sixth in the rookie race or whatever. So
yeah. I'll just really quickly add to that right there. He's also has produced the most 5-on-5 points of the Canucks this season, which I think is really cool. So
and I had that actually. He had 26 of his 27 points were even strength this year, which is pretty insane for a rookie too. So it's not like he was just gathering a bunch of power play points or anything like that.
yeah, and honestly, for me, like I think the Canucks have had maybe 3 bright spots this season. The first for me is definitely Hoglander. Like to me, Patterson and Hughes, when they came in, I expected them to be really dominant. I'm like, this is going to be awesome. When Hoglander came in, I honestly didn't know that much about him. I thought I saw him at the World Juniors, obviously, but I hadn't watched him play that much. And I thought he was going to be more of a pure skill guy, but I just love his hustle. Like, it's absolutely 100% enjoyable to watch, and he's only going to get better. And I'm really excited for Hoglander, and I thought tonight was probably his best game, so that was nice to see. And then for me, it was Vassar getting 20 goals in the shortened season. I think was a really nice story for the Canucks, and then Thatcher Demko becoming the bona fide number 1. But those are the positives, right? If you want to keep it positive.
And so I mean we'll do our next week. We're foreshadowing here. We'll wrap up the season talk and do an episode, many of our playoff brackets and stuff like that. But we won't have much more to say. I'm assuming between now and then, Canucks have what is it, another 9 games in the next 7 nights or something, or
Only 7, I think, or maybe it's only 6 now. They might have played their 7th last one, but it's 6 or 7 in like 10 days. And then the funny thing that's about to happen, right, is the playoffs in the States are going to start Saturday. I know now Boston, Washington's confirmed. They said 100% they're starting Saturday for that game. Or maybe it's not 100%, but they'd like to start Saturday for that game. But the weird thing that's going to happen, right, is the Canucks are going to be playing these like meaningless games while there's playoff hockey on.
yeah. And they're saying probably that they might even schedule those games for like daytime.
Yeah. I mean, why not?
And then just have the playoff games at night.
Yeah.
Have you got any more Canucks for your tune-in rant here, or should we start to move a little bit through the league news?
Yeah, I had other stuff written down, but honestly, I feel like that stuff's more like next week. I think there's too much news to get into it, so let's just roll through the news.
We'll go news and where to start. Because there was a ton this week. So I think I tried to do it in a sort of a timeliney fashion from the last time we talked. So the first thing that I have got is the Tom Wilson incident. And I'm going to try to be very quick and brief with what I got to say. And then we'll move on to the second item, which is the Tom Wilson non-suspension.
Right, yeah, of course.
The first part is obviously the world was up in arms over Tom Wilson, like punching Buchnevich in the side of the head with his hockey stick across his neck with his face planted in the ice,
Yeah.
following up with the ragdolling of Panarin and whether he maybe pulled his hair or something and intend to injure and all this.
Yeah.
I thought it was brutal, the whole thing. And after I saw the clip, I was like, okay, well, the punch and, while Buchnevich is down is worth one for sure. If it's like kind of a maybe one, but because it's Tom Wilson, it's a definite one.
Yeah.
Panarin thing, I was like, well, that like he threw him the ice when his helmet was on, like not on. I was like, that's intent to injure. So I was like, it's probably something, and because it's Tom Wilson, that's probably another two. So I was like, probably 3 games is what I would do.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was crazy. And then when he was like Superman mocking from the penalty box
That's
after,
so bad.
made me pretty angry. So what was your take on the incident?
Okay, so I've kind of two parts to it, I guess. Personally, I didn't like it. I don't really think there's a place in that for hockey anymore. I think it was overboard. But I do think if it was anyone, okay, so it's two separate parts, right? Like the Buchnevich punch really didn't like. I don't like seeing someone getting punched when they're literally on the ice. That was just dumb, and there should be a suspension for that for sure. The Panarin ragdoll, I give him a little bit more leeway because Panarin's a pretty light player, and Tom Wilson is super freaking strong. And I don't necessarily think that he knows how strong he is sometimes. It's almost like I don't want to, I'm not going to make that comparison because it's going to be a really big insult. But I think that almost looked worse than what it was because of who it was, right? Because if it had been anyone except for Panarin, I don't think he whips him down that hard. But
I have to interject in saying that, like, when you are that big, like, at that point, he knew who it was. He knew.
yeah,
Like,
and I think Tom Wilson, right, has shown enough that once his wires cross, he's just crazy. And that was probably one of those moments where, again, if it had been any other player except for Tom Wilson, I would have given him the benefit of the doubt. But it's Tom Wilson, so I don't. I didn't like the whole Superman stance thing. I thought that was stupid, but overall I didn't like it, but I actually thought it was probably going to be worse when I saw people reacting to it on Twitter. And then I went and watched the clip and I was like, oh, actually it's not quite as bad as I thought it was going to be. And then I guess going into like the non-suspension, so the uproar, right?
done.
What, sorry? Would he have gotten? I would have probably given him two, like 1 and 1. One for the punch, one for the ragdoll, and then I think you're good, right? But like the whole thing that Elliot Friedman kind of explained about it was like, so Tom Wilson got suspended earlier this year for boarding, and the suspension that was given to him then was for something that had never been suspended before. So they kind of bent their rules to give Tom Wilson the suspension. Now, this is almost exactly like what happened earlier last week with the whole New York Rangers incident, where no one has been suspended for those two behaviors before, like directly. Although I guess you could argue Todd Bertuzzi, Steve Moore a little bit with the Buchnevich thing, but it's not as severe. But anyway, there hadn't been like a direct comparison to it, so they didn't bend their rules that time and say, okay, we're gonna make precedent, we're gonna suspend him, and that was almost more surprising because they'd already done it once this year. So the $5,000 fine, like everyone freaks out about that, the number. The reason why it's $5,000 is because that's what the players negotiated in the CBA. That's the highest they can get fined. So it's stupid, I agree, but they fought for that, right? But yeah, I thought it was a joke, and if I was a Rangers fan, I'd be pissed off.
Fair. And then, like you said, segueing into the non-suspension. I guess he covered that already.
Sorry.
Well, yeah, it was disappointing, and that kind of leads into the Rangers' overreaction of their like public of George Peros, essentially, which was shocking. I feel like there's probably not many people outside New York that weren't like, well, that was a bold move to do.
Yeah. That was, I think, the craziest thing I've seen an NHL team do publicly, which is probably saying something. But again, in general, it's such a conservative sport and people don't really talk out against the league like ever. So that statement, I was like, holy shit. I thought it was a joke at first. Like, I thought someone created it as a meme or whatever.
Right.
Like, no, it's legit.
Yeah, no, they were upset about their star player getting ragdolled for sure, and they ended up getting a $250,000 fine, I think.
Yeah, and so the story with that one, right, too, is that, like, I don't know, I think it was 2015 or 2014 or something. San Jose was playing the playoffs and Rafi Torres got suspended. And basically, San Jose came out and said, we don't agree with the suspension. That's literally all they said. And they got $100,000 fine.
Right.
And so everyone was using that as an example. And they're like, oh my God, like, New York's going to get fined like a crazy amount. Like, some people were saying like $1 million and shit. And so I almost feel like the 250,000 was light in comparison to what people were thinking it was going to be. But
Maybe it was a little less because it's a COVID year and everything's hurting a little bit more than normal or something.
yeah, and I also wondered about it just being New York, because that that franchise is like, if not the most influential, it's the most influential US team for sure, right?
Right.
So I don't know, but it sucks for the owner, I guess. But yeah.
Yeah, and so speaking of the owner, the news cycle for New York did not stop because they were obviously involved in the Tom Wilson incident and then the non-suspension, and then they put out this public notice calling for George Peros to get fired, and then the next day they stepped it up and announced that they fired President John Davidson and GM Jeff Gordon, which I again thought was even more shocking than their public post they put up the day before. I thought that even though Gordon was on the job a few years before they put out the letter to the people saying they were rebuilding, I thought he's done a pretty fantastic job so far. For me, so far,
Yep.
I'm a little bit lucky with Kako and Lafreniere with the lottery balls, but I mean those two haven't really factored into the overall team.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I was really surprised. I did not see that coming.
Yeah, again, I don't think there's any way you can say it wasn't directly because of that incident, because if it hadn't been, they would have waited, right, the last 2 days or whatever it was until the end of their season. The fact they did it like immediately after, it must be directly because of the Tom Wilson, the whole incident, right? And like for years now, or basically since New York said they were going to do their rebuild like 3 years ago, I think as hockey fans, everyone has looked to New York being like, that is the best rebuild. Like the way they've done it and how fast they've been able to do it is impressive. And part of that is because they're in New York and you're able to get players like Panarin who want to come and play for you, right? So it's a little bit of luck, but Jeff Gordon definitely, for my money, I think he's done a very good job. And I was shocked with that one because to me there are a few clubs right now that are in a better position moving forward. And my prediction with New York is I think that they're going to fire David Quinn in the offseason. They're going to hire Mark Messier to be the coach. And then they're going to make a big freaking trade for Jack Eichel, which we'll probably get into later. But I just feel like that would be a very New York move. And now that they've brought back what's his nuts? Now I'm having a really big meltdown. The old GM of the Rangers, Glenn Sather. There we go.
What do you mean? He was already in advisor role, wasn't he? And they brought in Chris Drury as the president GM.
Yeah, but I think he's got a little bit more power now, and I just feel like, yeah, there's gonna be like a Glenn Sather-ish move coming.
I agree with most of what you say. I don't think Messier is going to be the coach, but I think he's going to get like an assistant GM or a consultant or something.
Yeah,
I don't see him behind the bench.
you him behind the bench. Okay.
No, and I think it'll be similar to what I kind of hot taked about Vancouver. I think whoever comes in, the new management team, they're probably going to take a little look at Quinn, I think, before they really make their move.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like Quinn was on like the hot seat earlier this season, right? And then the team kind of pulled together and they had a stronger second half, which is what they did the year before, right? Like they had a way better second half than their beginning. Um, just kind of touching on that Washington, the actual game, like there were 5 or 6 fights in the first 5 minutes. And the part that I found really kind of funny, but not funny from, I guess, a Canucks fan perspective, because you've seen so many things that were almost that incident happen to the Canucks in your life, and almost the same reaction happening, I guess, where the Canucks get outplayed physically or something happens that's physical to one of their star players, and then they try and get retribution, but like Washington won, I think, every single one of those fights.
Yeah.
Just clearly a tougher team, right? And then that's when Messier came in, and this is what I started thinking about. And he's like, "Oh, I wouldn't have built a team like that because we need toughness or whatever, right?" And I was like, "Oh, he's coming back into the fold for sure." But
I agree. And it sounds like he's been knocking on the door for years from what I looked into.
yeah, and I guess kind of the happy, positive story out of that game was that TJ Oshie scored that hat trick right after his dad passed away. So that was like a nice story out of it. But I watched that game because I think like everyone was doing that and we all wanted to kind of see what happened. But the game was actually really bad. It was not a good hockey game. Um, it was kind of like waiting for the next fight, and it was very interesting. And I think for me, what it kind of highlighted, and I'm kind of going to transition here a little bit, but like we all expected, or I think I expected, like the rivalries in these divisions to be a lot stronger after like only playing those same like 5, 6, whatever, 7, 8 teams. There we go. That's the number of teams in each division. But I don't think it's really happened this year outside of like a couple incidents. And like that game to me kind of highlighted it. Like there's still not a lot of hate in these games.
No.
It's going to be interesting to see for me with the playoffs, like how much of your in-season record is going to matter, because like you have these matchups that are basically solidified now, let's say in the North Division. So you've basically got Toronto, Montreal, and Toronto has owned that series against Montreal. And then you've got Winnipeg, Edmonton, and Edmonton has owned that series against Winnipeg. It's gonna be, yeah, like, is it gonna stay the same? Are you going to get 4 or 5 game series in those two where Toronto and Edmonton move on? Or is something going to change here? Because you have seen these opponents a lot, and I wonder who that plays into. And like tonight, Nashville played Tampa. No, Nashville played Carolina. There we go. That's the team they're playing in the playoffs. And they won 5-0. I don't know how much of that actually matters.
Right.
But they also won their last matchup against Carolina like 2 days ago.
Well, I wonder how much to counter what you're saying will go along with the fact that it is just this once-off COVID shortened regular season, but when the playoffs kick in, then the actual, we'll turn it up to 11 kind of thing.
Yeah, and like again, kind of going off of that, the one series that I think could go off the rails for sure is Tampa, Florida, and that's just again based on the fact that they played a couple times now this week. Florida won both those games, but those were fight-filled and like anger-filled games, so that will be fun to watch for sure. But yeah,
I thought you were going to say Minnesota, Vegas, because they've been getting scrappy down the stretch here too.
I have two. Those are kind of the two series that will be interesting to watch if they play out for sure. But yeah, that's kind of my takeaway. They talked about it a bit on the like at the intermission in tonight's game about how the North Division was a bit of a letdown, and I agree with that. I think like again, Calgary and Vancouver kind of bowing out really made it boring, right? Like, okay, we know which teams are making it, but
Pretty quickly too, yeah. Sidebar from the last point though, if Vancouver did do my hot take and got rid of the guys upstairs and they brought in John Davidson and Jeff Gordon, I would be thrilled.
Me too. That would be awesome. But I that would be like too good news for a Canucks fan, right?
It's not a Canuck move. Like, okay. So the next one, I'm going to try to do a couple of these quickly.
Okay, sorry. I'll try to be quick.
No, that's okay. No big deal. Because I don't think you'll have that much to say on these either, but we'll see. Like Tortorella and Columbus put out a statement saying they're publicly, amicably splitting up and moving on, and Columbus is keeping the house, and Tortorella will be finding another place to live.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone saw it coming. It's been talked about for a long time. No extension, benching the stars. He's kind of outgrown it. You've mentioned how in the past he seems to have outlasted himself after a few, 6-5 years.
Yeah.
So not that surprising. And when at the end we'll do a quick little fun little predict where they go, and well, I'll ask you where you think he's gonna go. But what do you think of the breakup? You saw it coming?
Yeah, completely predictable. I think maybe it's surprising that they didn't actually let him go earlier in the season because I feel like Columbus, we talked about last year or last episode that they're one of the disappointing teams of the season. And while it might have been predictable that they have a bit of a step back, I don't think people saw them being like a basement team. And so once it was pretty clear that he'd lost the room, I think I might have expected them to let him go then. But I'm not surprised that they're breaking up, basically.
Again, maybe due to the COVID shortened throwaway year, just suck it up and go through it.
Yeah.
And then on the coaching news, keeping with that, Rick Tocchet and Arizona also had a breakup this week, which I don't have much to say. I think Tocchet did a decent job in Arizona for what he was given.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Talkett's a pretty good coach. I think he showed that in Arizona, and like they were saying today again on the broadcast, his numbers in terms of wins and losses are pretty close to Travis Green's. So he hasn't done a bad job, but they have new management in Arizona, and they want to put their own guy in there. So not super surprising, but
Yeah. The next point I got is actually stuff that we could have covered in the first part because it's Canucks related, and it is the Zach McEwen suspension
yeah,
for the knee tap on Darnell Nurse's head.
yeah.
I watched the video because I missed that game, and I agreed. I thought for sure what he did not hit him very hard at all with his knee.
Yeah.
But he went out of his way to do it.
Yeah.
Even just I could have done it. It's not something.
Yeah.
I get why they made their point of giving him a game.
Yeah, I didn't hate it. I think that again the whole Department of Player Safety last week was a bit all over the place. I didn't like Darnell Nurse's takedown of Zach McEwen. It was, not Wilson on Panarin, but it wasn't nice. And I think that there was a lot of bad blood between those players that game, so I'm not surprised that something got a bit out of hand. But one game for McEwen wasn't out of this world.
Yeah, and I'll just quickly throw in there too that on your note of inconsistency within the player safety, the one thing they kept saying in the suspension video for McEwen is this is not a hockey play. And I kept thinking they really botched the Tom Wilson incident.
Yeah, right.
Anyways, the next one is also suspension themed and is on my Flyers where Shane got 2 games for it's along the same theme as McEwen. It was a suspension for being dumb.
Yeah.
You're lucky you didn't hurt them, and it was dumb what you did. What were you thinking?
Yeah.
And no problem with that one either. It was really stupid.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I don't really have much to say about that one. I did see it, and I thought it was appropriate what he got. So.
Yeah. Okay. The next note is, we talked about McJesus last episode. It was his big episode, but he did hit the 100 points. It took him 53 games. So welcome to the McDavid show, everybody. I think kind of saw it coming with how many games were left when all of a sudden he zipped up to 84 or whatever there.
Yeah, and again, it was absolutely incredible feat. I don't want to take away from him there. I think what he did was improbable, I'll say, in today's league to score that many points in 50 games, and Draisaitl's up to 80 points now, and that on its own is quite impressive. So Those guys are putting up big numbers. I think everyone knew as soon as that game started on Saturday night, like I was like, McDavid's getting 100 points, like 100%. And I wanted, all I wanted was him to not get it against Vancouver. I'm like, just make it, not against Vancouver. And then that, like, in that game specifically, the second period was very exciting and the Canucks kept coming back and tying it. And then McDavid got his 100th point on that Draisaitl goal. And I was like, yeah, they're not winning. Like, as soon as that happened, like, the Canucks are obviously losing. There's no way they're winning. And he got his 4 points. And I mean, like, playing 4 games against Vancouver definitely helped him because he kept picking up 3-4 points a game. And I don't want to take away from him, but the Canucks right now are not a very good defensive team. And the entire division is not very good defensively, but I will say this for McDavid, like, on his side of, people are saying, oh, he wouldn't have done it if he wasn't playing in this division. Well, if he was playing in the normal division, he'd be feasting on all those California teams. Like, it's not like the Pacific division that it's normally constructed is very good this year. You have Vegas, okay, and then I guess Edmonton, but the rest of those teams are pretty much trash. So, like, he probably gets it anyway with the way he's been playing.
Conversely, in a normal year, though, he'd be playing 2 games against every team.
Right, and I do get that, but it's just that's like the comment people have made, and I'm like, yeah, it might be pandemic related, but it's still super impressive.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is. And good for him.
Yeah.
Had enough of our time. A quick one here. Just wanted to one more time nod to Ryan Miller. Played his final game for sure. It ended. It's over. Good for him. Highest winning U.S. born goaltender of all time.
And I'll just quickly throw in there, because we're talking about goalies and wins, but Marc-Andre Fleury also passed Roberto Luongo, and he's now third in all-time wins.
Yeah, which is very, very impressive as well.
Yeah, throw that in there.
The last round the league news note I have here was today's Jack Eichel comments bombshells.
Yeah.
Like, I guess, Ristolainen had some comments. It was like, yeah, I want to win and I'm open to trades, but I'll stay. And Reinhardt sounded very non-committal, but I think it was Jack Eichel and everything he had to say that kind of led to. I think there was speculation before, but no one really thought like it's gonna happen. Like, you can't do that. Like, he's gonna be your franchise guy. You can't trade him. I think today changed that.
Yeah, I think the other thing that would be scary if I was a Buffalo Sabres fan is that Jack Eichel holds like all the cards here. I believe he has a full no move. So if Eichel comes out and basically says, like, does the Ryan Kessler and says, I want to go to Boston or whatever, because he's from Boston, then New York is not New York, Buffalo is basically screwed.
So I'm pretty sure his full no trade doesn't kick in until the end of next season, though.
Okay, I wasn't sure about that, because I was like, if that's the case, then like, good luck. But
I think they said that that's part of the reason he kind of timed it now, because he realizes he has a full no trade then, and it will make it more difficult for them to move him. So by now, this is the time to force it to happen, kind of thing.
Okay, yeah. But yeah, I honestly thought as soon as Buffalo's season went like down the toilet and he was injured, which go hand in hand together, obviously, I thought he was done. I didn't think he was coming back. I thought that's the end for Eichel in a Sabres sweater. So I'm not completely surprised that he comes out and says this. But I do think he's like not, definitely for sure not gonna be a Sabre next year. And if the Sabres were serious about rebuilding their rebuild, a guy like, kind of jumping off things, I'll go back to Eichel in a second, but like Sam Reinhart has 25 goals this year, which is pretty impressive, and he's a pretty good player. And if you wanted to move him, you could probably get a lot for him. He's the kind of guy that I almost feel like you owe it to him. He's been in the league for a while now. He's been consistent. Give him a shot to go somewhere else and to see what he can do, kind of thing.
I agree, and I think I would say that Ristolainen's the exact same, but on defense.
And Ristolainen is super interesting because they've been talking about trading him for years. Like they've almost wanted to get rid of Ristolainen and then they keep not doing it. So for him, I again feel like, be merciful and just let him go. And then the last kind of thing I'll say about Buffalo before I get back to Jack Eichel is the interesting thing they have going on with their goalie, Linus Ullmark. So he actually played quite well for them before he was hurt. And there's rumors that they really want to re-sign him. And if I'm Linus Ullmark, I'm saying, like, you're either giving me the bank or I'm leaving, right? Like, there's no way he stays. So it's entirely possible that next season the Sabres start without their number one center and their captain, or they've traded these players, right? Their top scoring player from this year in Reinhardt, top pairing defenseman in Ristolainen, and a number one goalie.
Yeah.
So that's gotta be rock bottom.
Yeah. But I mean, like, 3 of those 4 are old enough that you can justify that they weren't going to be around when the new core that they're trying to develop with, like, Dylan Cousins and whatnot,
Yeah.
and Rasmus Dahlin.
Yeah.
Ready. The other guys will have outgrown the window or whatever. So, yeah.
I mean, I guess the positive I'll say about Buffalo, because there's so few, is that Casey Middlestad has actually had a very impressive finish to this season.
Yeah,
And
good.
yeah, so that's kind of a positive. If he keeps it up, then he can continue his development. Then, like you said, like Dylan Cousins is a very good player. I've watched him a ton in his junior career. And then Rasmus Dahlin, I thought, had a better second half. I thought his first half was awful. But there's still talent there. But when teams do that rebuild of a rebuild, which is my ultimate fear of what the Canucks are going to do, but I feel for their fans. I feel for the team. It just sucks. Yeah. But if you had to pick where Eichel lands up, where do you say?
LA.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see LA. I just think going back to New York, I think they're going to do something crazy. And I think he's going to end up there. And not only that, and I meant to say this when we talked about the Tom Wilson stuff, so I'll just throw it in now. I think kind of like the Canucks after 2011 Boston, they're going to overreact to go out and find toughness. And I really think they're going to pay a big price and get Reeves from Vegas.
Okay, so I was going to say LA, I think they'll do, because I don't think they're going to do New York, even though they're not the same division in normal times. I know they are this year.
Yeah.
Probably won't want to see Eichel a bunch of times every year.
Right.
The West Coast, they would see him twice a year.
Yeah.
And my dark horse would be Vegas, because Vegas is in on everybody, and they don't have true center.
Yeah, the two kind of dark horse teams that I've heard a bit of chatter about are Vegas and then Colorado. But I think Vegas makes more sense than Colorado because, as you say, they've shown they're willing to flip guys around and they're willing to go all in. But if they trade with Vegas, there has to be a ton of money coming back, right? Like the thing about LA, specifically LA, is they have lots of cash right now. They could fit in Eichel and then, they'll give the picks and prospects back that New York would want or Buffalo would want. Now I'm all over the place.
So crazy with the way they've brought in stars and moved people out all willy-nilly. I can see them making a deal like sending Pietrangelo to New York, or not New York, to Buffalo.
Yeah.
Or Eichel.
Yeah, I definitely think there's stuff. There's gonna be something, and
makes sense for Buffalo because he's too old, but something along those lines.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I was gonna say maybe even then Buffalo could flip him. But it's that contract, right? Like there's only a few teams that are gonna be able to take $8 million in contract or whatever. So anyway, I think that's it for Eichel for me.
Dark horse Calgary, Monahan, and a bunch else, or what?
For Eichel?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't see that happening. But I'll give you my hot take with Calgary because I've been thinking about this week, and it comes in with Washington. I don't know if you had this to talk about, but it looks like Kuznetsov is like big time on the outs there. He ended up on the COVID list for a second time, and basically it sounds like unless he has a big playoffs, they're gonna move on from him. And I just thought maybe there's an interesting flip with Calgary and Washington, like a Gaudreau for Kuznetsov deal.
You
And
don't think a Monahan based on the both centermen or what?
well, Monahan, I don't think is good. Like, I honestly just don't think he's good enough. I think he's had a lot of success playing with players that are better than him. I think the more comparable for me would be Gaudreau if I'm Calgary, or if I'm Washington. Sorry, if I'm Calgary, I'd make that trade in 2 seconds.
But if you're Washington looking at it, and Monahan plays better when he plays with better players, he'd be going to be the number 2 center, which would be a little less pressure than number 1 center, because Backstrom would still assume that, and he'd be having, probably not. Who would Backstrom have? Ovechkin and,
Oshie.
she maybe. They play on the same line, so that
Um,
he would have what Mantha and Oshie were on the same line together.
Yeah, sorry. Who plays on the top line? It's Kuznetsov right now, I'm pretty sure. I think he's playing wing.
Oh, is it?
I think so, but I'm not 100% sure on that. Who else? Who else is in Washington? I should know.
I can see the change of scenery, not being the number 1 guy, and playing with a couple good wingers. Not that Gaudreau's not good.
For me, if I was a GM, I would pick up Gaudreau if I had the chance, like 100 times more than I'd pick up Monahan. I don't think Monahan generates enough.
I agree with that point of it. I'm just saying, I'm more focused on the
Wise, yeah. Yeah, I can see it.
I did not have any more news for this episode. I think we blasted through my points pretty quickly there.
Okay. Yeah, do I have anything else? No, I think that's everything for me as well. Yeah, I'm pretty caught up with the news. There we go. I can speak.
We did a good job, I think. So good for us. And I look forward to the next 2 because we're going to be talking about the season wrap and our predictions and doing our fun little playoff bracket challenge coming up pretty quick here. So the last thing I will throw at you, because I think we did pretty good for time, is this is where I'll play like the carousel music, and we'll play the coaching carousel game where I put down 6 teams.
Okay.
3 of them do have vacancies and 3 potentially could. And I put my guesses, and I've got a little column here with your name, and I'll put what you think as well, and I'll kind of hold on to that and see if we still talk about hockey when next season happens and all that stuff. First place I had was Columbus. We talked about Tortorella out.
Yes.
I think I mentioned to you earlier that I just have this weird gut feeling that Gerard Gallant is going to end there.
Okay. So
that was my pick for Columbus.
I have Columbus. I find super complicated because their GM is very notorious for making weird moves. Like off the board moves, which I guess in some ways Gallant would be at this stage, but I almost feel like he's gonna go with like an unknown.
Okay.
So I don't know if that's cheating and if you want me to pick a coach, but maybe we can come back to Columbus.
I was looking for you to pick from a pool of there's 8 well-known coaches, and if you want to pick unknown, I'll just say any of those 8 don't count.
Okay, let's do that.
Okay, that's fine. I'll put person X. Arizona is next. Again, talked about how Rick Tocchet is out, and I couldn't really decide here. They were the difficult one for me. So I did kind of cheat, and I put 2 different for this one. And so I put John Tortorella, and then I thought, I don't know if Arizona's going to want to spend the money on him was the only thing.
Right.
So maybe Jeff Blashill. And I know he still works for Detroit, but I put Detroit on this list because I don't know if he's going to be there next year.
It's amazing that he still has a job.
Yes.
I find that one very surprising. So my first thought with Arizona was also Tortorella. I don't know if he will want to go there because he can basically kind of he doesn't have to work, right? He said he wants to, but he doesn't have to. But I'll stick and I'll say Tortorella because I think it makes sense with the rest of that organization being, so all over the place to hire that coach.
Yeah, and I think that to back up a bit, I think bringing him in now would probably to them mirror when Columbus brought him in there, you
Yeah,
know,
with their core kind of.
situations, I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe. So third on the list is the third one that does definitely have an opening still, and that is the Seattle Kraken. Um, and I went with Rick Tocchet.
Okay, there you go. I like that pick. I'm going with Travis Green. I
Travis.
don't want to be right.
Yeah, I knew this would be fun for us because I went lame on a couple, and I didn't think you would.
Yeah.
So number 4, I went lame on, and I picked Carolina as the team because they technically don't have a coach signed for next year.
Yeah.
I did pick Brind'Amour because I think it's pretty much in stone.
Locked up. Yeah, I'm gonna agree with you there. I'm almost 100% sure on that one.
5th, I've got Vancouver, and I lame ducked again, and I got to stick with my hot take from the beginning of the episode where Travis Green will be extended.
Okay, can I do kind of a joke that's like a worst case scenario?
Guess who you legitimately think coaches Vancouver. I'll take your funny one on the side, but I want your prediction here.
This is tough because I feel like they can't be very expensive and they can't be very experienced. But okay, I'm gonna say Rick Tocchet.
I kind of saw that coming.
Yeah, only because of the parallels with him and Travis Green.
Yeah.
But my joke one is Mike Babcock.
I can't see it.
I could only because of the Aquilinis, because he would be cheap. Toronto's still paying him, and he's a big name. So they could be like, look, we got a big name coach.
You brought in the big guy.
Yeah. But it's a joke. Like, I don't really see it happening. So anyway.
Okay, and as I alluded to, the 6th and final one I put on the list does have a coach right now in Jeff Blashill, but I said I feel like I don't think he's going to be there next year. And I put Claude Julien as the coach coming in Detroit.
Interesting. Okay. I actually might go and say Gallant on that one. If Blashill's gone, because I think they'll want someone who works well with young players. And I think Gallant would be that guy.
All right.
Yeah. I'm not confident about any of those, to be completely honest.
For the names that I wanted us to pull from, you pulled 5 of the 6th, and you got your mystery unknown person going to Columbus. So
who was the one I missed?
what? Oh, Columbus.
Oh yeah, but who was the coach?
Oh, well, I mean, I was looking for Babcock or Blashill or Claude Julien.
Okay, yeah, okay.
That was the pool of 8 guys plus the 3 that you picked. Okay, so for fun, I guess, because of that, if you had to pick one of those 3 to coach Columbus, I'm still going to leave your person X as your Columbus.
Okay, so it's Julien. Who were the other 2? I forgot again.
Julien, Jeff Blashill, and Mike Babcock.
I don't think it's gonna be Babcock. It's too similar to Tortorella. I'll say Julien, I guess, out of those 3.
Out of those 3?
Yeah.
I would have said Blashill, I think.
Yeah. It was obviously between the 2. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like everyone thought Blashill was gonna be fired last year. I almost went lame with Detroit and just put him, but then I thought I'd switch it up because he's lasted so far. So you never know. But I could see Stevie Y doing something this year because I think their team's gonna be a lot better next year. So
yeah, me too. Okay, well, excellent and fun and thrilling way to end the episode.
Yeah.
So here we have done it again and come to the conclusion of episode 31 of our Hockey Talk on the Rocks. So for our 3 mighty listeners out there, thank you for listening, and we will do this again in probably a couple days' time based on our life schedules, and either talk hockey or do a cool playoff bracket, and everyone will be super impressed.
Woo woo.
Alrighty. Until next time.